Hey everybody, this is herculespetix, founder, curator, docent, and gift shop employee of the herculespetix Academy of Comic Book Studies. Today we're going to be looking at Warlock number 1 and 2. This is the first part of our first three-parter. This 1982 Baxter Paper special edition reprint series of Warlock was 6 issues long. Each one has almost 3 issues of comics in it, so I feel kind of like a wastrel, but I just didn't want to do like over an hour per episode. So I'm splitting it up into 3. And this reprints the entirety of Jim Starlin's legendary run on Warlock. Writing and penciling, sometimes inking and coloring even. He was quite the auteur back then. But these are really good. Some of the best shit that Marvel did in the 70s. This is up there with like Gerber's Howard the Duck, Don McGregor's stuff. This is really, not only really just kind of great cosmic superhero comics, but it gets really zany, very Gerber-esque at points. So let's start with the first issue here. So Jim Starlin in 1982 was commissioned to do these new wraparound covers. And here we go. It's weird how just the difference that like 6-7 years makes. This is so not as good as the art inside. You know, this is like when Dreadstar was just coming out. But it's still pretty fun. All these random characters. We have a little editorial from Al Milgrom, giving a little history and showing off the 3 covers of the issues that are being reprinted here. Kind of unfortunate that they're just these little black and white ones. I really wish they had all the covers, full size. So the first issue, this is a Strange Tales 178 from 1975. Who is Adam Warlock? Jim Starlin does everything except letter, even colors it. Some nice, almost Wallace Wood-like planets going on here and space scenes. So we have this little introduction here narrated by this weird character who I think we never see again. And I love this. His name's Sphinxor with an X. So, like I said, there's a lot of Gerber-like stuff in these comics. And Jim Starlin actually sneaks a lot of like subversive shit into these. Like, a few years later when Jim Shooter became editor-in-chief, that would have never flew. But Jim Starlin, the Marvel was in chaos back then. This is the time when there was like 4 editors-in-chief in like less than a year. So, the lunatics took over the asylum. And Jim Starlin was pretty much left alone to do whatever the hell he wanted. But we can see that Jim Starlin's a total fanboy. Just a few years before this, he was doing fanzine work, and then around 72, he started working professionally. But he just totally lovingly tells the whole origin and history of Adam Warlock. From his first appearance in Fantastic Four, when he popped out of his cocoon, and he was known only as him. That was his pronoun. And all of his adventures since then in the Marvel Universe. Fighting Thor, the High Evolutionary, just all that stuff. This is all from also from Marvel Premiere, Warlock's own title, The Incredible Hulk. I think it's basically every time Warlock has appeared since his creation in 66 or something, 67. I just love Jim Starlin. It's such a fanboy. The layouts just seem like cramming in all this stuff and information. Look at this weird creature that Sphinxor has. His little pet. You know that thing's not just a pet too. He's fucking that thing. Or at least getting blowjobs from it. So now we're brought up to date. And now the saga, Jim Starlin's Warlock, can truly start. There's this little planetoid, and we see this woman running. She's being pursued. She's full of terror. And I love when they do this in comics, the background, but then the main character is traveling through time as the background is one piece. And then we see her pursuers, these nasty looking guys. She falls, sprains her ankle, and then Warlock shows up. And this is Enter the Magus Chapter 2. I guess that recap was Chapter 1, even though it doesn't say it. So the woman says, "Yo, Warlock, I've crossed 12 galaxies to find you. 1 billion people seek your aid. You must help." And these guys, it turns out, they are from the Universal Church of Truth. And it's basically an intergalactic empire / religion. And this woman is a heretic, I guess. So she's marked for termination. And so Warlock says, "I'm not going to let that happen." And he starts fighting these guys. Warlock basically has the powers of a god. He's really strong. He has all these cosmic powers. And he has a soul gem in his forehead. This is just such perfect, 14-year-old comic shit. This is just exactly what you want to see when you're a teenager. I love all the panels. So many panels on a page. So Warlock's pretty much kicking their asses, but one of them gets off a stray shot and kills the woman. And these grand inquisitors, they teleport back to their home base, leaving Warlock alone with the dead woman. Look at that cosmic crap. So Warlock uses his soul gem to kind of reanimate the woman, almost like a medium during a seance, so she can tell him about this Universal Life Church. Oh, wait, sorry. The Universal Church of Truth. The Universal Life Church is much different. They're the ones that you can become a priest for $5 so you can do weddings. So, her ghostly form tells him the tale. How the Universal Church of Truth, it's a pious faith of saintly souls, supposedly, who preach peace and love, but really they just go around conquering planets and exterminating anyone who won't convert to their religion. They have inquisitions. It's led by this, at least the tempora leader of the church is the matriarch, this woman here. And so they've conquered thousands of planets and they just keep going. So that's why she was looking for Warlock, for his help to fight the real leader behind the church, who all of a sudden kind of interrupts her ghostly transmission, takes over, and it's the Magus, who is like the god, the leader and god of the Universal Church of Truth. This is such a weird, it almost looks like a slick Rory Hayes. It's so weird. It just does not look like something from a mainstream comic. It looks very underground. So then he basically casts Warlock into this thing with all these demons. And I think this is all in his mind. And then he tells him the secret of the Magus. I like this panel here. Very 70s. And look at this pose here. That is so Gil Kane. In fact, I think he swiped that. I think I've seen that Gil Kane pose. I like this, just the white. I like when they do that in comics. This is just a weird panel, too. I love it. Very underground looking. So basically, Magus tells Warlock that we are one and the same being. So remember I said that Jim Starlin was just a few years removed from fanzines? It's almost like Jim Starlin, even at his best, is still at heart a fanzine artist. He's still just a fanboy. And every now and then, you realize Jim Starlin's not the best artist. With the talent that he has, he does really good stuff with. But look at this, for example. I think he was trying to draw some kind of musculature here, but it just looks like an intestine is poking out from his tunic. It's really weird looking. I don't know if you can see that. It's kind of tiny. So then Magus leaves, stops his transmission, whatever, and Warlock is left alone on this planetoid, and he vows to stop the Magus. So now here's a reprint of Strange Tales number 179, Death Ship. And Jim Starlin doesn't color this one, but he still writes pencils and inks. This is some sharp-looking stuff. I love this splash page. That's great. So this is something we're going to see throughout this series. Jim Starlin loves to spend at least a page recapping the issue you just read. And that's what we see here. There's just a total recap. But you know, it's got new Jim Starlin art, and it's all good. So for some reason, I don't mind it. I like this little thing here for a flashback, using these receding panels or proceeding panels. Never really seen that before. Maybe I have and forgot. Still, the recap continues. Yeah, basically it's a page and a half of a recap. So Warlock is getting closer to the heart of this empire, the homeworld, and he confronts one of their space arcs, which is like a huge dreadnought battleship. And they fire their cannons at him. And I guess Warlock's not that super strong, because he wakes up. He's totally in chains, and he's the prisoner of the captain, Captain Autolycus of the Space Arc Great Divide. Once again, look how many panels on this page. He's really putting the work in. So Autolycus basically kicks him into this pit. And when he wakes up again, Warlock sees all these freaky looking aliens. And it turns out that they're basically the victims of the Universal Church of Truth. They all tell their story about how the church attacked their planets, enslaved everyone. But they're called non-productives. That's why they're scheduled to be terminated. That's why they're in this pit. Because they refuse to serve. So they're basically just going to be exterminated. Some of these aliens are just crazy looking. I like this guy. It looks very Graham Ingalls. It's just a head with these fingers at its base. Transportation fingers. But one of the creatures down there, it is a troll. And here we see the introduction of Pip the Troll, who will be a long-standing character in the Warlock comics. And in this galaxy, the trolls are known for their decadence and their, basically they're sleazy. But Pip the Troll kind of befriends him. Meanwhile, we see the matriarch, and she basically is thinking to herself, she's like, Warlock is this is the Magus' other self. Of course, the Magus doesn't want Warlock harmed, since it's his other self. But she says, ooh, but if there was an accident, then the Magus would also perish, and then I could lead the Universal Church. So she's planning to betray the Magus. It's very interesting. Whenever he draws the matriarch, it's totally in a different style. It's almost photorealistic. You could tell Jim Starlin never uses photo reference. He's obviously one of those fanboy artists who grew up looking at other comic books, didn't look at life. And, but whenever he draws her face, it looks very, I don't know, like Marlene Dietrich or something. So she basically tells Autolycus to kill Warlock. He doesn't like it, but he's like, I can't refuse an order. He's a very loyal soldier. But it seems like he's a pretty good guy. He actually doesn't want to do it. He has some ethics, you know. So all of these non-productives back in the pit, they're all like, Warlock, you must be our leader. You must lead us to freedom. And he's like, no, I refuse. And so it's kind of interesting. He tells this parable about these cavemen. And it's very much like Ham by Carlos Jimenez, the comic we looked at in Echo of Future Past. And it's very similar, where there's this one really strong caveman who says, why the hell am I hunting all the time? And I should be able to kick back and just get the majority of food because I'm the strongest. And if anybody doesn't like it, I'll kill them. So he basically becomes, it's the invention of government, basically. But then this other guy, Back, that guy's name was Grack. So Back says, I'm tired of this tyranny. He gets a bunch of friends and they overthrow Grack. But then within a little while, he becomes just as bad as Grack. So Warlock uses this story to say, this is why I don't want to rule anyone. And these prisoners take it the wrong way. They're like, fine, if you're not going to help us, we'll fight without you. And Warlock tells Pip, he says, I didn't say I was going to help. I just don't want to lead them. So the prisoners escape their cell. And it looks like they're just going to get mowed down. They have no weapons. And the church has these really high-tech weapons. They're just going to incinerate these poor fuckers. And then we see Warlock slowly going through and taking out all the guards. This is a fun page here. It's kind of interesting how he goes here and then it goes down. This little action here. But it's all very, cinematic. One action follows the other. Almost like a bunch of diptychs. And so Warlock makes it all the way to Autolycus's command center. And they start a big Donnybrook. And it turns out this captain's pretty fucking formidable. Warlock's having a tough time. In fact, such a tough time that he's dazed after Autolycus throws this piece of machinery at his head. And then he pulls the gun, and Warlock's just like, holy shit, I'm about to die. That gun can kill me, I know it. And, but then without him even trying to do it, his soul gem takes over. Look at this panel here. Such a weird, wonky drawing. That looks so Underground Comics to me. It also looks like Stuart Copeland, the drummer of the Police. His soul gem, all by itself, engulfs Autolycus and swallows his soul. And when he does, Warlock is overwhelmed with all of the memories of Autolycus, his whole life. And he's horrified. He's basically like, oh my God, is this just going to keep happening? Am I going to be like a vampire, a soul vampire? So obviously Jim Shooter was reading Elric at this time. Very Elric-like. Because the soul gem basically shows a sentience, and it's hungry for souls. So Warlock runs into the prisoners. They realize that he saved them. Once again, they want him to lead them. And he gives this whole speech about rule yourselves. You have a chance to recreate Eden. Don't remake the hell you've escaped from. Fools allow others to rule them. Wise men rule themselves. And so Warlock takes off in the ship and says, go to it, guys. Good luck to you. And Pip the Troll's on the ship. And he's like, I'm coming with you, boss. So this is the beginning of a beautiful friendship. Warlock tells him his whole story. And they're heading for the home world of the church. The center of this galactic empire. Once again, look at this. That is so, just not very good. Very fanzine art. I love this, though. Crazy space stuff. I don't think any planets really are like this. So now we have a reprint. This is the first half of a reprint of Strange Tales 181. Sorry, 180. These reprints split up the comics because they don't naturally fit, all the issues. So once again, Jim Starlin writes, pencils, and inks. But this is kind of funny. He makes anagrams of his name for the different credits, so it looks like it's not one person. Sam Jilchern, JL Mini Rats. Oh, he does the colors too, because that's Ms. Natural. So now they're on Homeworld. It's a good thing Pip came along because he knows Homeworld and he's familiar with it. Oh, I'm sorry, guys. Special thanks to Al Weiss for inking assistance. So Al Weiss inks parts of this. Once again, a whole page recap. I kind of like this very 70s thing, you know, with the big block of text and then the montage. Very 70s. I think you see this in McGregor comics, and I think Gerber does it too. Doug Munch. It's just like a very 70s thing. It's weird. I don't mind these recaps, especially because it's like kind of cool graphic design. Jim Starlin always tries to make it a little interesting. So Pip has a run-in with one of the Black Knights. They're like the soldiers of the church. Warlock saves him, and then is attacked by 4 other Black Knights. And so Warlock beats the tar out of him. And the whole time, just like Elric, he's got to fight the Soul Gem. The Soul Gem wants to suck their souls. But Warlock has to use every ounce of his will to keep the Soul Gem in check. Because he doesn't want to do that ever again. Now we see the matriarch. And the matriarch realizes that she made a mistake. She realizes that if she kills Warlock, then the Magus would have never even started the Universal Church of Truth. So she couldn't be the ruler, the temporal ruler. So she realizes, I'm just going to have to brainwash him and make him my slave. Once again, look at that. Very unlike any face in this comic when he draws her. So back to this alley where Warlock and Pip are hanging out. Warlock says, I can't, live with this gem anymore. I can't risk it taking one more soul. And he takes it out of his forehead. And all of a sudden he feels pain and emptiness. It's horrible. He falls over. And he puts the gem back in. He can't take it. And he realizes that this insidious gem, all the years he's worn it, it's been slowly and subtly sucking his soul into itself. So he's nothing but a hollow shell without the gem. And then all of a sudden this telescreen pops up, and it's the matriarch. And she basically says, Warlock, if you want to learn the secrets, learn what's up, come to my sacred palace. And so Warlock makes an Irish farewell and just skips out on Pip. Pip's just like talking so much he doesn't notice at first. Because Warlock doesn't want to risk Pip's life. He knows it's going to be a very dangerous mission. It's probably a trap. So we see him flying through the city. You can totally see in a lot of these panels the Gil Kane influence on Jim Starlin. He sneaks past the guards who are all lobotomized. God, this panel, I don't know why. I really like it. The weird brown coloring and this zoned out face of this guard. So Warlock shows up in the matriarch's chamber, and she basically clarifies the situation. She says, Magus is you from the future. He's not part of you, he is you. Of course, Warlock rails against this truth. He's like, no, it can't be true. And that's weird here. She looks totally different. And deep down, he knows that she's right. And then she hits this button, and Warlock falls through this trapdoor into this dungeon. And the issue ends there, to be continued next issue. They also commissioned Jim Starlin to do this little inside back cover. Kind of nice little fanzine drawing. It looks like it's from a fanzine. So now we got Warlock #2, the special edition. Another wraparound cover by Jim Starlin. Pretty fun stuff. Action-packed cover. Oops. I just discovered this last night. I need to buy a new copy. The center spread came loose of the staples. Sorry about this. It's a waste of time. Okay. Let's read this carefully. We have one of those editorials by Al Milgrom. I never liked these. He's a really bad cartoonist, Al Milgrom. I'm sorry. He's terrible. I just don't even like looking at his stuff. So now we have chapter 2 of that number 180, Strange Tales number 180, The Trial of Adam Warlock. And here it gets full-on Gerber, zany. I mean, I really shouldn't say that. Jim Starlin was pretty zany. I don't know if you guys, you'll probably see it in this issue a lot, but the rumor is that back in the day, in the 70s, Jim Starlin was taking acid all the time. And you could really see it in this story. So basically there's this judge named Crator, and it's a total sham trial. Crator even admits it. He's basically like, yeah, we're going to give you a trial so we can then execute you nice and legal. I love this. His defense attorney is this guy. What the hell is that? And then look at the prosecutor. This looks like something from a Garbage Pail Kids or something. That's just such a weird design. So not Marvel Comics. He even says that your court-appointed defender will give you the best legal counsel if he can stay awake. The jury are all these statues. Look at that guy. It's amazing. And they bring a witness supposedly to condemn Warlock, and this guy is actually brave and just says, you are the guilty one. You turn everything good into evil. And they just obliterate him. They just destroy him. Warlock tries to speak up for himself, and they put a manacle on him. A metal gag. Look at this guy. That's so funny. And I like this when the judge renders the verdict of guilty. He looks over at his defense attorney and is just asleep. His big eyes closed. So I believe this is the issue where this is one of those great little stories in comics history. So Marvel was such an asylum then, where the lunatics had taken over, that this issue, Strange Tales number 180, Tom Orzechowski, the letterer, changed the comic code seal to read the cosmic code, which meant technically it wasn't approved by the comics code. And so they snuck in this crazy thing. And there's other references to this throughout the comic, but they're more subtle. So Pip is pissed off that he got ditched by Warlocks. He goes into this bar and he orders a merde stinger. And in French, merde is shit. And so there's a bunch of references that Pip the Troll each is a shit eater. And Jim Starlin snuck this in a bunch of comics. But that one is just full on. I mean, a lot of people know that word merde. So then this green-skinned woman comes up to Pip. And she says, I'm seeking your friend Adam Warlock. I've come to see if he really has a chance of defeating the Magus. If he doesn't, I plan to kill him. So, what a great character design. And of course, guys, this is Gamora, who will become a regular character in Warlock. She is so amazing. Just perfect 14-year-old boy fodder. And I'm not even not just the sexiness of her. She's just like so kick-ass. Meanwhile, back at the mock trial, Warlock rips off his gag. And he takes his chains and he starts destroying the bailiffs. It looks like they're just made of glass. And then he destroys the jury. I love these two panels. With usually I don't like when it's the monochromatic in comics. But this is so powerful. Look at all this Kirby crackle in the background. Those are some awesome looking panels. Just very groovy. I love this. He kicks that prosecutor. The big mouth. And then Krator is going to attack Warlock. Krator. And the soul gem is like speaking to Adam Warlock. He's like, do not fight me this time. Yes, release me. It will be good. Yes, so good. And this time, Warlock willingly uses the soul gem. It's not against his will. He's just like, this guy's going to kill me. He's way more powerful. The only way I hope I have to survive is to suck his soul. Really great panel there. There's a couple of instances of this design work, and I suspect that Jim Starlin got his hands on a Spirograph, the toy from the 70s, the drawing toy. This looks like a Spirograph design. I could be wrong, but it totally does. So once again, as soon as he's done, Warlock instantly feels regret. And it's like, what have I done? And he's totally tormented by Krator's thoughts. Because he says, at last I understand. He truly believed what he did was just. In his mind, I was a villain. Even worse yet, by stealing his soul, I proved him right. So I love this throughout these Warlock comics. Jim Starlin has lots of, like, I guess, high school philosophy stuff. You know, it's like the stuff of the Matrix or something. You know, it's like, it's not that advanced philosophical thoughts, but it's kind of fun, you know, like, to think about, you know. And then the Matrix shows up with her goons. And, God, I love that drawing of the matriarch. Almost looks like early Howard Chaykin there. The way she's so stylish, you know. And the goons pick up Warlock and throw him in this pit. And that's the end of this issue. I guess there's workers in the pit who are going to indoctrinate him. So he'll become her slave. So now we have Strange Tales number 181 reprinted. And this story is called 1,000 Clowns. And Al Milgrom has taken over the inking. And apparently, other than lettering, Jim Starlin does everything else once again. I like this. It's like Len Wein editing, Al Milgrom inking, Tom Orzechowski lettering, Jim Starlin, insanity. So when I was reading this last night, I looked at this page. I was like, oh, I love when artists like do the Ditko Dimension stuff. And this is so cool. He actually gives a shout out. He says, this story is dedicated to Steve Ditko, who gave us all a different reality. That's kind of cool. Very typical Steve Ditko stuff, but then he adds his own spin on it. Probably after the second hit of LSD started hitting him. There's some pretty crazy underground looking stuff in here. Once again, a whole other page recap. And basically Warlock wakes up and in this weird realm of clowns. It still looks like the Ditko dimension, but all these clowns show up. And there's this head clown. It's basically the one in charge of brainwashing him. So what we find out, though, is this is really all just like a virtual reality thing. Here's the head clown in real life. And he's basically mentioning that there's visual and audio distortions. Something's going on with the program. There's an artist there, an artist clown, and the head clown says, you have to be socially acceptable here. You have to fit in. And they paint a clown face on Warlock, and he wipes it off with his cape. And here we see the two programming assistants. Meanwhile, Gamora and Pip have snuck in to this place to free Warlock. They find out where he's staying from this guard, where he's being held, I should say. And the guard's terrified of her. And I guess she's known throughout the galaxy, Gamora, the deadliest woman in the whole galaxy. I love that little panel. It's like a very tiny movie poster. Really cool looking. Back in the program. So it has all of this like dime store philosophy and stuff. These clowns are throwing pies at this heretic who's crucified on this cross. And Warlock grabs two of the pies and throws them in the face of the junior programmers. The main head programmer's like, this is outrageous. He's going against the programming. He just knocked two of my assistants unconscious. So the matriarch shows up and the guy's like, oh shit, I didn't know you were there. So here we see what's going on. See, Warlock has got this like VR helmet on. There's the assistants that he knocked down. So the head programmers is all like, yeah, his will is too strong. We didn't program these clowns in. His willpower, because he doesn't like what they're saying, he turned them all into clowns. You know, just to make them look ridiculous. The matriarch seems kind of tickled by this. She's like, this Adam Warlock's quite the interesting fellow. She basically says, try a different tactic. You got to brainwash him. I don't want to have to execute you guys. So now her plan is, she can keep Warlock alive, but he'll be her slave. And worst case scenario, she'll order him to kill himself if the Magus ever tries to, kill her or something. So there's all this crazy shit in this program. Like, we see these clowns building a tower of trash. Every day they do this, and then it topples. And a bunch of clowns die. But then the next day they build it again. I guess some kind of metaphor for something. I guess maybe capitalism. And Warlock is just, his mind's being blown. He's like, this is crazy. And then he finds diamonds in the trash. And he's like, that's nuts. And he actually says, let me out of here. Like it's from Brooklyn. That's funny. And he says, there has to be an escape route. And he threatens the clown. And the clown says, there's only one way out, the doorway of madness. Meanwhile, in reality, we see Gamora and Pip beating the shit out of these programmers. Or these guards, I should say. And in the program, we see the clown leading Warlock to the doorway, and Warlock kicks it in and goes inside. And he's instantly attacked by the madness monster. Look at this guy with that goofy face. Kind of a cute cartoon face. Warlock tries to use a soul gem on him, but I guess this thing has no soul. Oh man, guys, look at that Gil Kane there right there. That's very Gil Kane. And now this guy starts laying some philosophy down, some insight. He says, I'm all those foul things you never dared to do. I'm the twisted evil that infests your inner self. I am that part of yourself you no longer dare ignore. By myself, I am not truly evil. I am simply what you make of me. Fear me and I'll destroy you. Come to terms with me and you shall be invincible. And Warlock is convinced. He says, it's true. You've always been with me, yet I've denied you. The veil of false morality has been lifted from my eyes. I see clearly. You're merely a different point of view, no more than a different reality. And as soon as he realizes that, the VR helmet pops off and he's back in reality. Pip has got that head programmer down on his knees. And then all of a sudden, one of the telescreens, it's the Magus again. This is so weird. And just like in Wizard of Oz, Warlock goes behind this wall, this panel, and we actually finally see the Magus for real. I am the true Magus. He says, you've lost, Warlock. There's absolutely nothing you can do to change what's about to occur. Even when I was a kid, I thought this white afro was ridiculous. I wonder if he has like a cosmic afro pick for it. That would be nice. So now this is a reprint of Warlock #1. They started the numbering over. Wait, am I right about that? No, I think it's Warlock #9. Now I'm confused. Why did it go from Strange Tales by Jim Starlin? I don't know. Oh, I think 1 through 8 was published. It was canceled. Those were the Gil Kane issues. Well, some of them. And then it went to Strange Tales. And then it sold well enough that they gave the title back to him. That's what happened. This is the Infinity Effect. Pretty groovy logo there. Very 70s. And now we have Steve Leialola entering as the inker. Get a little small recap telling us who all the characters are. And Magus and Warlock start fighting. And Warlock doesn't have a chance. Magus is like he's a god. He's the powers of a god. The whole time he's basically just taunting him though. And basically what he tells him, he says, I know everything you're going to do and say. I lived this thousands of years before when I was you and I attacked my future mega self, just like you're doing now. He even starts mimicking him. Like, as Warlock says stuff, he echoes it. And then we see some more recap stuff. And basically he tells him that the whole Magus planned the whole thing about Warlock going into the doorway of madness. Because it's important that Warlock has altered his perception so he can eventually become the Magus. It's an important step. Pip the Troll tries to help. He's a brave little guy, even though he's a little creep. Of course, he just swats him away. The Magus just swats him. Meanwhile, Gamora starts telepathically communicating with someone she calls the Master. And she says, I am undetected. And apparently she has this blade that the Master gave her, which is somehow imbued with some kind of power that it can actually kill the Magus. Meanwhile, Magus and Warlock continue their whatever the hell they're doing. It's almost like therapy. And the Magus tells his plan to him. He says, in a few moments, I'm going to bathe you in radiation. This will basically be like a tracking beam because I'm going to summon this cosmic being known as the In-Betweener. He'll be able to follow you because of the radiation no matter where you go. And eventually he'll grab you and he'll transport you to his own bizarre domain, which is a land between reality and illusion, time and space, almost like the Twilight Zone. And basically he's going to spend thousands of years there because this all happened to the Magus. And of course his mind totally snaps. And he makes a cocoon for himself to protect him from these quote-unquote truths. But eventually, he can't resist them. It's another good take on the Ditko Dimension shit, but more goofy. So he basically embraces total madness. And when he comes out of his cocoon, he's traveled back thousands of years to basically Warlock's present. And these creatures from this planet attack him. He decimates them, except for a few survivors, and they all bow down and worship him as a god. And this is how he started the Universal Church of Truth. He basically took over the whole planet and was not only their ruler, but soon was considered a god by these people. And then they spread throughout the galaxy. And then he talks about how he found the matriarch. Apparently the matriarch was a prostitute, but he could tell that she had an iron will and a mind like a razor. So he let her take control of the temporal church. He says it's a pity that she was preordained to betray me. Every god needs his Judas. So the fight continues. Of course, Magus can predict everything Warlock's going to do. And then Magus makes reality go all zany. This is, once again, the LSD's kicking in at Jim Starlin's studio. I love when they do this shit in some of these comics. Pip is getting all nauseous. And so Magus says, in exactly 12 seconds, I will summon the in-betweener. And we see this countdown page, 12 panels every second. Gamora is closing in on Magus with her special blade. And at 0, it turns out Magus the whole time was ready for Gamora. I guess basically because her master thought that she had a chance to kill him because she's a new factor in this timeline. But even so, the Magus still has enough godlike senses that he gives her the back of his hand without even looking at her. And then he zaps Warlock with that radiation. And he's going to summon the in-betweener. Look at that fucked up leg there. What's going on? All of a sudden he looks like Wood God. He's got one Wood God leg. So basically the Magus just leaves him. He says, remember Adam Warlock, there's no escape from the in-betweener. You're fucked. Adam Warlock totally falls into despair. Look at that. You can totally see the Steve Leialola inks. That's a really nicely inked panel. And, you know, he's basically completely depressed about being a stealer of souls, first of all. But now he's fated to become the Magus. He says, all it's going to cost me is my humanity. And then the Magus confronts the matriarch. And she's like, so you figured me out. He's like, yep. And he says, there'll always be a place for you among the saints that have died for the church. And he drops her into a trapdoor. And then he summons 25,000 of his Black Knights to liquidate everyone in that room where Warlock was hanging out with his friends. Because he figures, because of this whole Gamora thing, the X Factor, he doesn't want to take any chances. So 25,000 Black Knights should occupy Warlock's brain so he can't figure out some clever way out of this. And then, meanwhile, we see a portal open up. And who should come through it but Gamora's master, Thanos, the Mad God. And basically he says, I'm here to help you out, Warlock. And right outside the door, about to attack, is the first wave of those 25,000 Black Knights. This one's nice that they reprint some of the covers. I wish they did this in all the issues. Yeah, it was Warlock 9, which will continue next issue. This is a really weird pinup commissioned by from Jim Starlin. Look at his legs here. It looks like he has polio. They're all fucked up. And I don't know who this guy is. This is just a weird looking guy. So there you go, guys. Warlock number 1 and 2. Jim Starlin's one of his magnum opuses. Magnum opie. But I still love these. These are so fun. I just love the crazy psychedelic shit he sneaks into these Marvel comics. It almost makes it better that it's published by Marvel. Like if this was just some weird ground level comic from Star Reach, you'd be like, ah, that's cute. But the fact that he did all this crazy shit under the Comics Code, fucking love it. So, good stuff. It is also funny, I mentioned this, I think, before, that there weren't that many great writers in the 70s. I mean, there was the handful like Gerber, Munch, McGregor. But for the most part, this is before the era of Alan Moore, Grant Morrison, when writers became the stars. Back then, most comics were pretty dopily written. The average comic writer wasn't that great. And it's funny that Jim Starlin, who was just an artist, he's like one of the best writers of that period. Like maybe you had Archie Goodwin, maybe in a weird way Robert Kanigher, even though his stuff was pretty rote. But it's hard to pick great writers from that period. There's hundreds of artists you can name from the golden age to the 80s. And but how many writers can you name that are like, ooh, I'll read anything he does? Not many. Pretty much, Bruce Jones maybe, Jan Sternad for the Undergrounds, Tom Veitch. There's not many great writers, but Jim Starlin was one of them, and he didn't even start out as a writer. He just started writing his own, for Marvel, because he probably didn't like the scripts he was being handed. So there you go, guys. First part of our 3-part look at Warlock. Next time I'll be looking at 3 and 4, and hope you liked it, and I hope to see you next time here at the Herculespetix Academy of Comic Book Studies.